And I would like to introduce the next speaker, Dominik W. I didn't see him yet before. Dominik. Please come up on the stage.
Hey, Rolf, good to see you again.
Good to see you. Good to see you. Please, go ahead. Dominik W. He's Corporate Vice President, Manufacturing Mobility at Microsoft, responsible for Microsoft's worldwide business cross-industry with a focus on agriculture, aerospace, high-tech, electronics, semiconductor, industrial equipment, machinery, chemicals, vehicle OEMs, and suppliers. Wow. That's a lot of business. Prior to Microsoft, he was Managing Director at Global Automotive, Manufacturing, and Energy at Google Cloud. Before that, he spent 15 years at McKinsey & Company, helping large organizations in the automotive, industrial, telco, and consumer vertical with their digital transformation. That's where we met, actually, and it's a real pleasure to have you here at the ELIV with your presentation. I think you will introduce it by yourself, and we're very excited to hear your talk.
Thanks so much, Rolf, and really good to see you again. Thank you for inviting me here.
Let me give you the
Thank you.
advance here.
So,
you want to stay here, or you want to move over?
All the way over? Yeah.
Fine.
I think I'm going to touch on some of the themes we've already heard about before in the opening. So, as Rolf just mentioned, I was a management consultant for a while. I was working for McKinsey, and I think my former colleagues, this would be their dream or their nightmare. I'm not so sure. Either way, they don't need to be too afraid yet or too excited because we're not fully here yet. What you're seeing today is a fully handmade presentation by my team and myself. But who knows what's in a year's time when we meet here again at ELIV. I mean, this may be the last year where you see handmade presentations. The technology is advancing so fast. So I want to talk, Rolf mentioned it in his opening, AI is a big topic. I want to talk about, what we see happening in AI. Microsoft certainly has been at the forefront of this in the past couple of years. So I want to share a little bit, give an inside look at how is Microsoft looking at AI, independent of automotive. And then I want to dive into kind of what we are hearing from our customers and partners in the automotive industry, where they see the biggest potential. And I want to kind of show you a little bit the 360. I mean, clearly everybody here is mainly concerned with how cars are getting developed. That's going to be my focus. But I want to show you kind of the full view of what we are hearing and seeing happening in the industry. So fundamentally, if we take a step back, the reason we believe this is so interesting right now is because there are two fundamental changes happening in computing at the same time. The one is that we're looking at a new user interface. And clearly in the car, using voice has been a very natural way of interacting with the car already. But we're seeing a lot more maturity in how these voice assistants work and the intelligence they can apply. And I think what's also interesting is I actually had to change that slide last minute because it said before natural language interface. And now it says natural user interface because we now have the most recent version of GPT-4 available to everybody. I can really encourage you, give me a show of hands. Who has a GPT account? Okay, it's quite a lot of people, maybe 70%. If you toy around with the latest version, right, you now have access to GPT-4, you can see you can feed it images, right? And it does a halfway decent job in interpreting the images. And I think if you just look at the pace of change and anticipate how fast this is going to change the way we interact with computing, I think it's really mind-boggling. And then behind that, obviously, we have a reasoning engine. And I'm going to talk about more why this reasoning engine is so powerful. So why is all of this happening now? Number one is we have these foundation models. AI has been used for a long time. A lot of you have been using AI for a very long time in what I would call probably the most advanced AI use case on the planet, right? Autonomous driving is the most advanced AI use case. But the AI models we've been using, they've been comparatively small, and they've been highly specialized on solving one particular problem, trained to solve one particular problem. And the fundamental change that we have now is we have these massive foundation models, right, where it takes basically a cloud-scale computing network to even just train such a model. But then it's a lot more versatile. And because of the generalized nature of these AI models, they become a computing platform. A specialized model cannot be a platform. It's something specialized you build. Once you generalize it, it becomes a computing platform. And then obviously, you need the hardware to do it, right? So that this is why this is happening now. The hardware is ready. The hardware is ready to do these things. And then also you need the insane amounts of data to train these models. When we look at GitHub Copilot, that I'm sure many of you have tried on software development, the reason this works is because we have a lot of code available, right, in GitHub, open source code that the model can be trained on. So Microsoft is deeply invested in that space. We have more than 1,000 researchers working on it. I'm sure, as you've seen now, like a lot of this is now kind of happening and finding the way into our products. So I don't want to keep this too theoretical. And some of you may have seen this. I just want to give you a little bit like a feel for what's happening. How will this feel like from a consumer experience? And I want to show you our most advanced product that we'll be rolling out shortly. So this is the capability that we'll be making available to every consumer very shortly. I want to highlight a couple of things in here to step back again and infer what it means for technology more broadly. A very important concept in here is the concept of the co-pilot. And that's the word that Microsoft has chosen very, very deliberately. And very deliberately, it's not an autopilot. I think this industry has a lot of experience, right, with the word autopilot and what it means, what it doesn't mean. And I think, like, based on that learning experience, our fundamental philosophy is that we can't take the human out of the loop. That is not the ambition, that is not the philosophy, that is not the approach. The human always will need to stay in the loop in the way we build our technology. And so the technology is here to empower people to do their work better, like a calculator, like a word processor, like a hammer. And I think it's a very, very important distinction. I think many of you are leaders of large organizations. And I think many of you have faced headwinds when you roll out new technologies. And a lot of these kind of headwinds are based in people being afraid, right? Will this take away my job? Will I lose control? I was talking to the CEO of TÜV Süd the other day. He was like, the livelihood of my employees is like attesting to something, right? Like, if the machine does it, like, how do these people kind of should think about their job? And so, like, none of this is what is intended to happen, right? It's just a tool to make things easier. The human will always need to stay accountable and stay in the loop. Further on the co-pilot concept, we've been really doubling down in rolling it out in our first-party products. And as you might have seen, there's been like an announcement every week. Satya Nadella said, like, people think like I got up on January 1st and said, like, let's do a bunch of press releases. And the reason Microsoft was able to do this at this pace is because we basically built an underlying infrastructure for all of our product teams to roll this out in a very, very easy manner. And we're making this fundamental infrastructure available to everybody in something that we call the Copilot stack. So we want to make it easy for everybody in the world that develops a piece of software to bring the same capabilities of generative AI that we have in our products to their products. And a very important part here is that this basically then brings the Gen AI capability everywhere. But there's another very important concept here, which is the concept of a plugin. And so we've also made it very easy for everybody that has some kind of data set capability that they want to make available through the Copilot that is in our products to plug into the Copilot. So for instance, Kayak here, or on the business side, Amadeus, they're building plugins for Copilot, which means you can book flights either in a business or in a private context through the Copilot. And just now think about like if your entire kind of ecosystem, right, of things that you do is all of a sudden like available through Copilot, it becomes a new default user interface. Obviously, I mean, I think a lot of you, think about this in an enterprise context. IP is important, trust is important, confidentiality is important. And that's why at the same time at Microsoft, we invested very heavily, right, in making this available in a way that it's enterprise grade, that your IP stays protected, that the data you put in there is not used to train our models and so on. Now, with this as a background on like what we're doing at Microsoft in general, I wanted to kind of switch gears a little bit and talk about what is it that we believe is happening in the auto industry. And the first area, obviously, is new experiences. And Magnus is here from Mercedes. Hey, Magnus, and he's going to be up on stage in a minute. We had a wonderful collaboration with Mercedes working on bringing ChatGPT into their vehicles. And what they've accomplished in a very short amount of time, which is really astonishing, is bringing ChatGPT to 900,000 vehicles in the US, basically rolling it out at significant scale in a beta program, enabling everybody with MBUS to use the ChatGPT capability. And I think what this shows is the ease of use of the technology, and it also shows like how this is kind of enabling a new paradigm of user interaction in the vehicle. So we want to build on this, and I think it sparked a lot of imagination of like how the future interaction in the car will look like. And I think today we're still like, there's a lot of pressing buttons and so on. If now voice actually becomes usable and becomes so powerful, conversation becomes the default interaction mode in the car. And then I think what's very important is that's why I told you before about the plugins, right? I think a lot of car companies, they've been working very hard to bring the digital life into the car, and it's very hard. There are all these custom integrations, make the calendar work with my navigation, right? It's a lot of work just to kind of make all of these point integrations. But by now, basically, the entire world integrating through plugins into the Copilot, all of this integration is basically there by default. There's nothing you need to do, and you also don't need an app store, right? Like it's just all happening. So a lot of auto industry companies that we've been talking about, right, have been very excited about this kind of vision of the cockpit of the future. And at the same time, what I've learned in my year at Microsoft now and also in my previous role at Google is that a lot of auto OEMs, and it was part of the discussion just now, right? Car companies, they want to own the end user experience. And so the approach we're taking is building a conversation-first user experience in a way that is modular, that basically maintains, the customer stays the car OEM's customer, the data stays the car OEM's data, right? We have no ambition in any of this. We basically just want to provide our underlying infrastructure capability to enable the auto industry to build these next-gen conversational experiences in the car. In a way that's secure and in a way that mains the OEM's interface with the customer. And I think what's also very important, and I'm sure a lot of you guys are in the room here today, we don't want to disrupt the existing automotive ecosystem. There are a lot of very capable companies in the ecosystem that are providing bits and pieces of this experience. And rather than kind of building an end-to-end stack, right, and trying to kind of displace all of this, we want to open up our own capabilities and integrate with all of these companies that are in the ecosystem today, and basically up-level their capabilities with generative AI in a way that we can bring this new experience to our end customers. I guess the other piece here is, and the more exciting the car gets from a software perspective, obviously the more exciting the car gets also like as an attack surface. And I mean, you know this better than I do, 150 million lines of code, right? Like, I mean, there's a lot of concerns about cybersecurity. So that's another area of deep investment we've made. Probably not many are aware, Microsoft is the biggest security company on the planet, security software company on the planet. Microsoft has a $20 billion business in security already today. And what we've been doing is we've been applying all this security expertise and depth and scale into how does it work in the vehicle context. And so the way we look at it is you're going to have a vehicle security operations center. And then within that vehicle security operations center, you embed what Microsoft calls the security copilot, another copilot, same philosophy that I described before, but for security. And Microsoft is processing 65 trillion threat signals every day. And so what we will do is we will basically pass out these threat signals. The security copilot assesses the code in your car, looks at the code, and it then basically identifies the main vulnerabilities in a dynamic manner, right? And basically helping you understand like where's basically the moving target of your exposure with the vehicle. Now I think what people in the room probably are most concerned about is like how do we make this happen? How do we bring these new experiences to the road? And this is actually the area where we've seen most interest from the auto industry. Like, what does generative AI do to the way we design and develop cars? And there's the obvious piece of software, and we have GitHub Copilot in the market now for more than 2 years. It's been hugely successful. But like, why can't we do the same thing on the hardware design side of designing and developing cars that we're doing on the software side? And then also, I think, where a lot of the friction is coming today is when you bring hardware and software together. Because they are separate tool chains, they're separate processes, they're different worlds. And what can we contribute in order to bring these worlds more closely together? Because we own part of that tool chain on the software side. So can we get better in integrating with the tool chain that you guys operate on the hardware side, so it gets less painful for the industry to kind of build a car that works? So on the software piece, GM is one of our very early adopters. I'm sure many others here in the room are using GitHub Copilot. We're seeing a lot of success. And we're also seeing that on average, every second line of code is being written by the Copilot. So lots of productivity increases. And also, interestingly, a lot of developers are also saying, they enjoy their work more because it's like a lot of menial, not so interesting part of their work that is getting automated. Now, bridging over to hardware, this is a little bit more kind of future-looking, but I want to show you something that we've already done in Maya. Maya is the leading 3D graphics software when you do a Hollywood movie. And basically, we built Copilot together with Autodesk, who makes Maya. We built a Copilot for Maya, which basically gives you a conversational interface to do 3D design. Now, obviously, the step from here, as you can imagine, to doing 3D design on a vehicle is not that big anymore. And so we're basically working with all of these specialist software companies that make the 3D design software to bring generative AI capability into 3D design. So you can say you can leverage past designs, you can look for similarities, right? You can make adjustments to your car all through a natural language interface, the same way you create images in Midjourney or DALL-E. Lastly, autonomous driving. It's already been a topic I think we've seen. It's still some work to do. We are doing our piece to support the entire loop for autonomous driving, mainly contributing our infrastructure and like making our infrastructure work for the specific use case. And again, as I mentioned in the vehicle case, it's really about working with the existing ecosystem of highly specialized players in the industry rather than inventing something new from scratch. Now, the obvious question is, what does generative AI do to autonomous vehicle development? And there's two things that we are seeing happening. The number one is obviously creating test cases and scenarios is a lot of hassle. And so synthetic data generation using generative AI is something that we believe has a lot of opportunity here. And then obviously the entire data management behind it is a big hassle. And that's not specific to autonomous driving. Our experience is there's no AI without data. So in parallel to all the investment that Microsoft has been making on the AI side, Microsoft has been investing very deeply on the data side, with our latest product being Fabric, which is a new data product that is based on open source standards to make it a lot easier to manage the entire life cycle of data. So moving beyond what's happening in the vehicle, just like a couple kind of highlights left and right. Obviously, there's something happening in how you make cars. And we're looking at like how does the co-pilot capabilities being brought into the factory. We're working with Siemens, for instance, on automatically generating PLC code. I think that's an obvious use case. And then on the sales side, I want to roll another video for you.
Car buying is a big decision. It's the second largest thing a person will do after buying a home. CarMax disrupted the industry by bringing honesty and transparency. We have tens of thousands of cars on our website or through our app. And without talking to a human being, customers can get overwhelmed.
The challenge that we had was that we only could create so much content. There's manual effort, there's research, the writing, there's the proofreading.
Our writers can only produce so much content a month. It would have taken them years to produce enough pages to be relevant.
Azure OpenAI service allows us to summarize all of the custom reviews and put it in a simple to read and understandable sentence.
We're able to take content and feedback from a lot of other customers, curate it, and create this very tailored content for a specific car.
Through the fine-tuning process, we're at 80% of the content goes through without a human needing to be involved. We're estimating an individual would take 11 years to do what OpenAI service has done in days.
Oops. What happened? Huh. Okay. Yeah, I only have one chapter left. I think I can improvise. So those were the applications in it's back. Those were the applications in on the factory floor and in marketing. Now, I think many of you here in the room lead significant scale organizations, and I think while there's a lot of excitement and momentum around AI, the question is like how do you scale it out? And I think many of you have, made experience as I have, new technology, people like maybe you do a pilot, right? It's hard to scale out. And so I think for generative AI specifically, I think the first thing we've learned on the journey with our customers is because so many ideas about use case, so many things what you can do. First of all, there's a lot of that technology which just come to you. It will come to you through our products. And as I hope I've been able to illustrate, it will come to you through the products you're already using, right? If you have, I'm sure you have, very specific software. We're working with a lot of these deep industry-specific software providers to bring the generative AI capability to you. So nothing you need to do, it's just going to come to you. And then we have the bottom part with the customer co-pilot. And that is our first advice to everybody kind of embarking on that journey. Figure out, like, what are all the use cases that are basically on the top of this circle? And single out these very few use cases that, and usually there are only few, right, that are really kind of unique to your company, really deep, transformational, and single out those and then focus your efforts on those rather than, getting, spread out over too many things. And then I think there's kind of three learnings that we've had on the journey, right? Like if we reflect back, like why is Microsoft where Microsoft is today? And what are we seeing with our customers and partners, there's three characteristics that we see. The number one is leader-led transformation. And I think in our case, it's fair to say we wouldn't be here where we are, like also on the generative AI journey, also in many other ways, if it wasn't for Satya Nadella. Satya Nadella many years ago made the choice to make the deep investment in OpenAI when everybody was like, oh, why do we need this? And then, as you can now see by like the rapid sequence of product announcement, right? He basically made everybody do it. And I think, particularly in Germany, we have a very strong kind of moderator-type leadership culture, right? Where you basically listen to your folks and you enable them, right? But I think when you have a tech change at that pace, unless, as a leader, you tell people like, this is north and this is where we need to go, I mean, it's going to be slowed down. The second one is data. I talked about data, no AI without data. We're seeing this everywhere. We're seeing this with ourselves. the data transformation that I'm sure everybody's working on becomes even more important these days. And then lastly is willingness to change. That has also been interesting in our own journey, because for every product we had a roadmap, right? We had a roadmap pre-GPT. And it didn't include GPT. And then we said, okay, now we need all these Copilot capabilities. And we basically had to throw all of these roadmaps overboard and rewrite all of them, right? Otherwise, we wouldn't be where we are now. So that concludes what I want to share with you. Again, Rolf, thanks so much for allowing me to be here with you guys today. I hope this was insightful, and enjoy the rest of the conference. Thank you very much.
Dominik, thanks a whole lot for your great overview over AI, and the applications and examples were really great. I like the notion of a co-pilot rather than an autopilot. So great talk from you. Thanks very much, and have some fun at the conference.
Thanks so much, Rolf. Thank you.
Bye-bye.